There is a trophy sitting in a glass case at the Pearl Harbor Memorial in Hawaii. Most people walk right past it. It is made of wood and brass. It is not very large. There is no dramatic lighting on it, no sign explaining why it matters. But if you stop and read the small plaque beside it, you will learn something that most people never know. The trophy was supposed to be awarded on December 20th, 1941, to the winning Navy band at a music competition in Pearl Harbor. It was never awarded because the night before the competition, on the evening of December 6th, 1941, the USS Arizona Band played the best set of their lives at Block Arena on the naval base. The hall was packed wall to wall, sailors in their dress whites, girls in their best dresses. People were dancing so hard the floor was shaking. The Arizona Band played Georgia on My Mind, and then they played Jingle Bells as a jitterbug, and the whole room was on its feet, and nobody wanted the music to stop. One sailor who was there that night said he had never heard anything like it. He said he stayed until the very end, until the band played their last note, because he did not want it to be over. So he remembered thinking, I have to come back for the finals on the 20th. He never got to see them play again. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, the entire USS Arizona Band, all 21 members, was killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor. 21 musicians, gone. The ship sank in 9 minutes. 1,177 men died with it. The Arizona Band was at their battle stations when the bomb hit. The trophy that was supposed to be theirs sat unclaimed. So the other bands, the ones who had competed against them the night before, the ones who had danced to their music and cheered for them and shaken their hands, made a decision. They gave the trophy to the Arizona Band anyway. They renamed it the Arizona Trophy. And they gave it to men who were no longer there to receive it. That trophy has sat in a glass case at Pearl Harbor ever since. Most people walk right past it. I want you to stop. Because this is not a story about bombs and battleships, and a date which will live in infamy. You already know that story. This is a story about the night before. About December 6th, 1941. About a dance hall full of young men who had no idea that the music they were playing that night would be the last music they ever made. About 87,000 Americans on the island of Oahu who went to sleep that Saturday night thinking they would wake up to another ordinary Sunday in paradise. About what ordinary looks like right before it ends. Stay with me. December 6th, 1941. Saturday. In Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. It was the kind of day that makes people forget they are in the military. The sun was warm. The water was blue. The palm trees along the harbor were still. The Pacific Fleet sat in its berths in neat rows. 8 battleships moored along Battleship Row, looking like the most permanent things in the world. Life on the base was routine, comfortable even. Sailors had their duties in the morning, their free time in the afternoon. Many of them had been stationed in Hawaii long enough that it had started to feel like home. Some had brought their wives over. Some had been swimming at Waikiki on their days off. Some had learned the names of the local shop owners in Honolulu. It was Saturday, the weekend. For most of them, it meant liberty. Liberty meant Honolulu. It meant the bars and diners on Hotel Street. It meant movies and shave ice and the chance to act like a civilian for a few hours, even if just for one evening. A young sailor named Bob Coates was stationed on the USS Nevada. He had drawn a rare overnight Liberty Pass. That meant he could sleep on land instead of on his ship. To a sailor, this was a small miracle. That evening, he walked into town. He was 20 years old. He was from Idaho. He had never left the United States before joining the Navy. Hawaii still felt like something from a magazine to him. He found a place to get dinner. He went to bed early. He had no idea that while he was sleeping, 6 Japanese aircraft carriers were sitting 230 miles north of Oahu, pointed south. At Block Arena, The music started at 7. The Battle of Music was a semi-final competition between the bands of the ships anchored at Pearl Harbor. 21 members per band. Best uniforms, best songs. The crowd was enormous. A woman named Patsy Thompson was 10 years old. Her father was in the Navy. She loved to dance, and the jitterbug was the dance of the decade. When the MC of the competition asked if anyone in the crowd wanted to dance with her, a 17-year-old sailor named Jack Evans jumped up from his seat. They danced together. The crowd cheered. She won the trophy for best jitterbug. Jack Evans walked back to his ship that night, the USS Arizona. The Arizona Band played Georgia on My Mind. They played There Will Be Some Changes Made. They played Jingle Bells as a jitterbug number, fast and laughing, and the whole hall was on its feet. They were one of the best bands on the island. Everyone said so. They were supposed to compete in the finals on December 20th. They never did. A soldier named Jim Downing was stationed at Pearl Harbor that December. He was a gunner's mate on the USS West Virginia. On the evening of December 6th, he had shore leave. He and his wife, Morena, who had followed him to Hawaii from the mainland, had dinner together at a restaurant in Honolulu. They talked about Christmas, about their families back home, about what they would do when his enlistment was finished. After dinner, he walked her to the bus stop. He watched her bus pull away. He went back to his ship. He was 29 years old. They had been married for less than a year. He did not know that the next morning, the West Virginia would be struck by 7 torpedoes and 2 bombs, that he would spend most of December 7th pulling men from the water, that one of the men he pulled out would die in his arms. But on the evening of December 6th, he was just a man at a bus stop, watching his wife ride away, thinking about Christmas. On the other side of the island, at Wheeler Army Airfield, 2 pilots named Kenneth Taylor and George Welch were at a poker game that went too late. They were young, 22 years old, both of them, best friends, the kind of young men who pushed things a little further than they were supposed to, who stayed out past when they should have, who laughed louder than the room required. The poker game ended around 3 in the morning. They went to sleep. Less than 5 hours later, they would hear the sound of explosions and realize those were not drills. They would race to Halewa Airfield, which had not been attacked. They would demand their planes be armed. They would take off into the middle of the Japanese attack before anyone officially told them to, outrunning the order, the protocol, all of it. On December 7th, 1941, Kenneth Taylor and George Welch shot down between 6 and 10 Japanese aircraft against 353 planes. But on the night of December 6th, they were just 2 young men at a poker table, losing track of time. Also on the island that night were several people who had warnings that went unheard. The United States had been tracking Japanese diplomatic communications for months. A code named Purple had been broken. Messages had been intercepted. On November 27th, Washington had sent a war warning to commanders in the Pacific. It said to expect aggressive action by Japan in the near future. The warning did not say Pearl Harbor. It did not say December 7th. The admiral in command of the Pacific Fleet, Husband Kimmel, and the general in command of the Army forces in Hawaii, Walter Short, both received the warning. Both took some precautions. Neither considered an attack on Pearl Harbor itself to be the most likely scenario. Short was more worried about sabotage from Japanese Americans living in Hawaii. He ordered his aircraft lined up closely together on the airfield so they would be easier to guard. Lined up closely together, they were also much easier to destroy from the air. On the morning of December 7th, the Japanese pilots noticed this. It made their job considerably simpler. At 7:02 in the morning, 2 Army privates operating a radar station at Opana Point picked up a massive formation of aircraft on their screen, 137 miles out. coming from the north. They called their duty officer, Lieutenant Kermit Tyler. Tyler told them not to worry about it. He assumed it was a flight of B-17 bombers expected from California that morning. It was not. The privates, Joseph Lockhart and George Elliott, were not told to track the contact. They did so anyway, watching it on the screen until it got close enough that it disappeared into the ground clutter around Oahu. At 7:55 in the morning, the attack began. Lockhart and Elliott had given the island 53 minutes of warning. Nobody used it. Back at the harbor, Saturday night was winding down. The ships were dark and quiet. Lights out was at 10. Sailors were in their bunks. Some wrote letters home by flashlight. Some read. Most slept. A young man from West Virginia, named Martin Matthews, was on the USS Arizona. He was 18 years old. He had joined the Navy because there was no work at home. His family was poor. He sent money back when he could. The night before the attack, he wrote a letter to his mother. He told her he was fine, that Hawaii was beautiful, that he hoped to come home for Christmas next year. He never finished the letter. It was found in his bunk. On the USS Oklahoma, a sailor named Jesse Mahaffey was playing cards with his bunkmates. He had grown up in a small town in Alabama. He was 19. He was known for his laugh, for the way he could imitate the officers and make everyone in the room fall over. At 10 o'clock, the cards went away. The lights went out. The harbor was quiet. The big guns on the battleships pointed uselessly at the sky. Somewhere in the darkness to the north, 353 Japanese aircraft were in the air, and 87,000 Americans on the island of Oahu were asleep. At 7:55 in the morning of December 7th, the attack began. The first wave of Japanese planes came in from the north. Torpedo bombers flew low over the harbor, so low that sailors on the ships could see the pilots' faces. Bomb after bomb struck Battleship Row. At 8:10, a 1,760-pound armor-piercing bomb struck the USS Arizona. It penetrated to the forward ammunition magazine. The explosion that followed was visible from miles away. The Arizona sank in 9 minutes. 1,177 men were aboard. 1,177 men died. The ship still lies at the bottom of Pearl Harbor today. It was never raised. The men are still inside. On the USS West Virginia, Jim Downing survived. He spent the rest of the day pulling men from the water. That evening, he found a way to get word to Morena. She did not know if he was alive. On the USS Nevada, Bob Coates was on land when the attack started. He watched from the shore. A woman in a coffee shop was shouting that Pearl Harbor was being bombed. He thought she was wrong. Then he watched a Japanese plane fly overhead, so low he could see the red circle on its wings. He thought for a moment, they must be making it very realistic today. Then he understood. On the airfield at Haleiwa, Kenneth Taylor and George Welch took off without orders and flew directly into the attack. On the radar screen at Opana Point, the contact had long since disappeared. By 9:55, the second wave of Japanese aircraft had withdrawn. In 90 minutes, 2,403 Americans were dead. 18 ships were sunk or damaged. More than 180 aircraft were destroyed. And the United States, which had been technically at peace the morning before, was at war. The next day, President Franklin Roosevelt stood before Congress. He called December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. Congress voted for war in 11 minutes. The vote in the Senate was 82-0. The vote in the House was 388-1. The one dissenting vote came from a congresswoman named Jeannette Rankin of Montana. She had also voted against entering the First World War. She would later say, "As a woman, I can't go to war, and I refuse to send anyone else." She cast her vote alone. The United States entered World War II, and nothing was ever the same. Bob Coates served in the Pacific for the next several years. He came home to Idaho, bought a sheep ranch, and lived until 2011. In his later years, he talked about December 6th often, about the overnight liberty, the coffee shop woman, the plane flying so low he could see the rising sun. He said, "I still thought it was an exercise. Even then, you just don't expect it." Jim Downing and his wife, Morena, stayed together. He came home. He became a pastor. He lived to be 102 years old. He gave talks about Pearl Harbor until the end of his life. He always talked about the evening of December 6th, about dinner with Morena in Honolulu, about watching her bus drive away. He said, "I did not know if I would ever see her again, but at the time I just thought, I will see her Saturday," and walked back to my ship. Kenneth Taylor and George Welch were both recommended for the Medal of Honor. They received the Distinguished Service Cross instead. Some believe the decoration was reduced because they had taken off without orders. Taylor said later that he did not regret it. George Welch died in a plane crash in 1954 while testing a new aircraft. Patsy Thompson, the 10-year-old who won the Jitterbug Trophy that night at Block Arena, spent years wondering what happened to the 17-year-old sailor who had danced with her. She wrote letters to veterans' newsletters. She searched for decades. Eventually, a man named Jack Evans saw one of her letters. He had survived Pearl Harbor. He had served out the war. He had lived a whole life. He left her a message on her answering machine. He said, "If this is Pat Thompson, I am the sailor you are looking for." They had lived within 15 miles of each other for 40 years. As for the Arizona Band, their trophy sits today at the USS Arizona Memorial in Pearl Harbor. It was renamed the Arizona Trophy in their honor. Every year on December 7th, visitors walk past it. Most of them do not know what it means. Now you do. 2,403 Americans were killed on December 7th, 1941. Every single one of them had been alive the night before. Most of them had been at Block Arena, or in the bars on Hotel Street, or on their ships writing letters, or asleep in their bunks dreaming about home. Most of them were young. The average age of the sailors killed on December 7th was just 19 years old. 19. They had signed up for a steady paycheck, or an adventure, or because there was nothing else at home. Some of them had never left their hometown before the Navy. Some of them had never seen the ocean. They had gone to bed on December 6th, thinking they would wake up to another ordinary Sunday in paradise. The Arizona Trophy sits in the memorial at Pearl Harbor. The men it belongs to are still in the ship below. On the evening of December 6th, 1941, their band played Georgia on My Mind, and the hall was full, and the floor was full, and nobody wanted the night to end. Somewhere in the harbor, the ship sat dark and still. Somewhere to the north, 353 aircraft were in the air, and the music kept playing, because nobody knew. Nobody knew that December 6th was the last ordinary day, until they woke up to December 7th, and the world they had known was gone.